Imagine a world 70 million years ago, in the midst of the Cretaceous period. Instead of the Europe we know today, there was a vast archipelago. Yes, Europe at that time was a collection of islands formed by tectonic processes. There were islands of different sizes, and each had its own unique ecosystem. But among this diversity, one place stood out dramatically. Hatzeg was an isolated land, literally lost in the middle of the ocean. The nearest landmass was about 200 kilometers away from Hatzeg's shores, and it's safe to say that even Dracula would hesitate to venture here. The weather was different too. Today, Romania has a temperate continental climate with familiar seasons, dry summers, followed by autumn, and then snowy winters, but 70 million years ago, things were quite different. Back then, it was tropical, and this creates a paradox in itself. Many scientists believe the local climate was subtropical, which also implied wet and dry seasons. Yet, despite this, much of Hatzeg's fauna and flora, based on fossil evidence, was distinctly tropical. How is this possible? The answer lies in the island's abundant rivers and lakes, which provided a consistent water supply to the vegetation throughout the year. Thus, tropical plants thrived in comfortable conditions. At first glance, Hatzeg might have seemed like a paradise, dense forests among the rivers, humid air, and fertile soil enriched by volcanic activity, but that was only at first glance. In reality, Hatzeg was the perfect laboratory for evolutionary experiments, and the primary factor was isolation. It was this isolation that played a key role in the island's history. Not only did it restrict species migration, but it also drastically altered their sizes. Scientists even coined a specific term for this phenomenon, the island rule. This principle explains how isolated ecosystems transform their inhabitants. Today, we see similar examples on Madagascar, home to dwarf lemurs, or on the Channel Islands off the California coast, where dwarf foxes live. And 10,000 years ago, islands in the Mediterranean were home to dwarf elephants and hippopotamuses. But how exactly does the island rule work? It's all about balance. Limited resources force animals to adapt. Being large becomes simply unprofitable. The larger the body, the more food it needs. Thus, those who can manage with less energy survive. Over generations, animals on many islands shrink, becoming smaller to survive. Even the monstrous creatures we often imagine as giants shrank into pale shadows of their former selves on Hatzeg. But this phenomenon has a flip side. As they become smaller, they turn into easy prey for other animals, and predators in turn grow larger. Let's take a closer look at this paradise and get to know its inhabitants more closely. Take a closer look. There, emerging from the marshy mire, someone is watching us intently. It's Allodaposuchus. It looks like a crocodile, doesn't it? But compared to some modern crocodiles, this predator was dwarfed, measuring only about 3 meters long. You might chuckle at the word dwarf. Sure, one of the predators of Hatzeg was smaller than today's crocodilians, but size isn't everything. Allodaposuchus was a survival expert with a skill set that more than made up for its modest dimensions. Take a look at its skull, short but powerful, perfectly designed for snapping shut on prey and holding it tight. Special sinuses in the skull enhanced its ability to pick up sounds on land. Its strong forelimbs made it far more agile than its modern crocodilian relatives. That's right, this dwarf could move swiftly, not only in water but also on land, remaining a dangerous predator. But more often than not, it opted for a different hunting strategy. It was simple yet lethally effective. While waiting in the water, Allodaposuchus patiently bided its time until an unsuspecting prey came close. It hunted just about anything: birds, small dinosaurs, and even the young of larger animals. One lightning-fast launch, and the prey would vanish in its powerful jaws. Thanks to this ambush hunting style, Allodaposuchus was one of Hatzeg's top predators. But even this one had competitors. A shadow flickers among the trees. Is it a bird? Well, it's definitely something feathered. This is Allodaposuchus, one of the most mysterious creatures of the late Cretaceous. However, depending on which scientist you ask, they might call it Heptasteornis instead. There's still no consensus on the matter. The remains of Allodaposuchus were so fragmentary that scientists initially mistook it for a prehistoric owl. That's right. The animal's long, thin bones resembled the skeleton of an ancient bird. However, the shape of its femur and foot suggested it was in fact a dinosaur. Further studies revealed that Allodaposuchus was a small theropod, a type of bipedal dinosaur. Some researchers speculate it might have been related to Alvarez-saurids, a group of small predators known for their unique limb structure. Although scientists have not been able to fully reconstruct what Allodaposuchus looked like, they do have some theories. Allodaposuchus was a small predator, about 1.5 to 2 meters long and weighing 30 kilograms. Indeed, its small size gave it a distinct advantage in speed and agility, and not just on land. Researchers suggest that this creature had powerful hind legs with claws, which were likely designed for climbing. Some findings, including its unusual foot structure, strongly indicate that Allodaposuchus was adapted to living in trees. Its size allowed it to reach the canopies, giving it a huge advantage over other predators. Its diet was likely diverse, consisting of small animals, possibly insects, lizards, or even hatchlings of other dinosaurs. It probably hunted very cautiously, waiting for the perfect moment for a precise, lightning speed attack. And there were good reasons for such caution, because the island was home to dragons. However, 70 million years ago, dragons looked very different from what you might imagine. Meet Balaur bondoc, or the stocky dragon. It could reach up to 2 meters in length and weighed about 15 kilograms, roughly the size of a small dog. And this is supposed to be one of Hatzeg's fearsome predators. The surprising part is, we don't actually know if Balaur bondoc was a predator. At first glance, everything is clear as two large, sickle-shaped claws on its hind legs clearly suggest a tool for ripping prey apart. Look at its sturdy legs, perfect for pursuit. Indeed, this species could easily compete with Allodaposuchus for prey. But here's where the mystery begins. The issue lies in this dinosaur's unique anatomy, for instance. The third toe on its feet was non-functional, and the bones in its legs were almost fused, similar to what we see in modern flightless birds like cassowaries or ostriches. Moreover, Balaur bondoc had a much wider pelvis than typical predators. This led to an unexpected hypothesis: Balaur bondoc may have been an omnivore, eating both animals and plants. Its large pelvis suggests a relatively large stomach and intestines, the kind needed to digest a plant-heavy diet. And the strong legs may not have been for swift attacks, but for supporting its body weight. As for the claws, they might not have been for slashing, but rather for holding on to prey, similar to how modern birds of prey like eagles pin down their victims by stomping them into the ground. Some scientists even propose that Balaur bondoc could have been an early flightless bird its ancestors could fly. But this dinosaur may have lost that ability due to isolation. Yes, the stocky dragon remains one of Hatzeg's most mysterious creatures, but not the most mysterious. Among the dinosaurs of Hatzeg, there is a species that to this day exists only in scientists' imaginations. We are talking about Megalosaurus hungaricus, a hypothetical dinosaur that could have been one of the largest flightless creatures on the island. It is believed to have hunted small to medium-sized dinosaurs, but could also scavenge. The problem is the lack of information. All mentions of this dinosaur are based on fragmentary data that remains highly debated among paleontologists. But even if Megalosaurus hungaricus did exist, it likely lived in constant fear. Like all of Hatzeg's inhabitants, it would have avoided open spaces at all costs. Why? Because the greatest danger lurked in the sky. Just imagine a giant shadow suddenly obscuring the sun above your head. A gust of wind sweeps past. It is already too late to run. Yes, Hatzeg was a world ruled not by terrestrial predators, but by enormous flying reptiles. One of them was Hatzegopteryx tambama, the little giant of Hatzeg. Certainly, for a pterosaur, Hatzegopteryx might not have been the largest, but by modern standards, it was quite an impressive creature. The wingspan of this pterosaur was over 3 meters. It had an elongated neck, an extended beak-like snout, and a relatively compact, lightweight body. Its wings were perfectly designed for gliding, helping it conserve energy during long-distance flights. The unique structure of its limbs allowed Hatzegopteryx to fold its wings and move on all fours, similar to some modern flying animals like flying foxes. Hatzegopteryx could spend hours patrolling forests and plains, scanning open spaces for small prey, but its standout feature was its adaptation to life on land. Yes, you've heard that right, this pterosaur spent a lot of time on the ground. Why? The answer is simple. It enjoyed hunting at a leisurely pace. Like other members of the Agile family, Hatzegopteryx likely had a lifestyle resembling that of modern herons or storks. That is, it relied heavily on its long beak, which allowed it to easily probe soft soil or snatch prey from marshy rivers and lakes. This meant that when aerial hunting didn't yield results, Hatzegopteryx could always feast on lizards or insects. Convenient, right? Especially considering that this pterosaur had to survive alongside far more dangerous relatives. Compared to the next monster, Hatzegopteryx might seem quite harmless. Do you notice how quiet it is around here? That's because all the animals have hidden, anticipating Allodaposuchus tharmacensis. This was one of the large pterosaur species that inhabited Hatzeg. Its name translates to Dragon of Alba, referencing the Alba region in modern-day Romania, where its remains were discovered. But this dragon wasn't a mythical creature, or a speculative hypothesis. It was very real. Allodaposuchus' wingspan ranged from 5 to 7 meters. Its overall anatomy was something one of a kind. For instance, its beak was riddled with tiny holes, but they weren't meant for breathing. What are they for, like its relative, Urasdarko? Allodaposuchus used its beak to forage in soil and water. Tiny holes transformed its snout into an incredibly sensitive tool. It was almost like a biological metal detector, but for food. Hundreds of tiny holes transformed its snout into an incredibly sensitive tool. It was almost like a biological metal detector, but for food. Today, when we know that Allodaposuchus held an intermediate position among the flying predators of the island. Yes, it could easily hunt dwarf dinosaurs like Balaur or Telmatosaurus and Allodaposuchus, but even chase smaller Urasdarko individuals. But even Allodaposuchus wouldn't dare face the true nightmare of Hatzeg, the monster that brought death to all living things here. Here, imagine a creature not just large but gigantic. Its wingspan was up to 12 meters, comparable to a small Cessna airplane. Imagine a creature not just large but gigantic. Its wingspan was up to 12 meters, comparable to a small Cessna airplane. It hovered over Hatzeg, scanning forests, plains, and shallow waters in search of prey. This is Hatzegopteryx, one of the largest flying animals in history, a true terror of the Cretaceous period. Wait a minute, what about the island rule? Could such a massive predator really grow in isolation? Scientists say yes. Hatzegopteryx is an excellent example of the opposite phenomenon. Island gigantism, a situation where isolation and a lack of competition allow animals to grow to enormous sizes. Here on the island, Hatzegopteryx was the undisputed ruler. Everything else was its prey. Nothing hindered its growth. The size of Hatzegopteryx sets it apart even among its fellow pterosaurs. Its massive skull, measuring up to 2.5 meters in length, was even larger than that of the famous Quetzalcoatlus, whose skull was roughly 1 meter long. While Quetzalcoatlus was tall and slender, Hatzegopteryx was stockier and more robust. For a flying creature, it was astoundingly heavy, but this sheer mass allowed it to overpower even large prey. It could hunt from the air, diving onto its prey and literally stomping it into the ground. Or it could descend to the forest floor, find prey hiding in the underbrush, and take it down. Its short, powerful neck resembled a telescopic crane, and its massive beak could kill animals with one precise strike. Thanks to its colossal size, Hatzegopteryx could easily swallow prey whole. It also didn't shy away from raiding nests, feasting on eggs and hatchlings as a casual breakfast. Hatzegopteryx was at the top of Hatzeg's food chain. So, who exactly was on its terrifying menu? A small bipedal creature is moving leisurely along a trail. It has a triangular head, a strong beak, and a tail that helps balance its every movement. This is Zalmoxes, an herbivorous inhabitant of Hatzeg and one of the primary targets for the island's predators. It reached about 2.5 meters in length and weighed approximately 45 kilograms. Its strong hind legs allowed it to move confidently through densely vegetated terrain and to swiftly escape at the first sign of danger. And the poor thing faced dangers around every corner. Zalmoxes fed on nearly any vegetation available. Its diet included horsetails, ferns, young shoots, and other low-lying plants. Its powerful beak resembled that of a modern parrot, but it was much larger. Zalmoxes used it to crush tough plant material. Its teeth were well suited for processing fiber-rich vegetation to extract the maximum amount of nutrients. But how do you eat safely when you could become someone else's meal at any moment? The answer is to not stay alone. It seems that Zalmoxes was clearly not a loner. Scientists have discovered multiple skeletons of these dinosaurs in a single location, suggesting that they lived in groups. A group is not only more effective at finding food, but also better at defending against predators. Wait, what nonsense is this? Doesn't that make them an even bigger target for predators? Yes and no. In a group, it becomes easier to detect a threat, and each individual's chances of survival increase significantly. Apparently, the life of Zalmoxes mirrored that of modern gazelles or zebras. They grazed in herds and were always ready to signal an alarm. But at least zebras don't have to keep an eye on the sky. Unlike the ancient inhabitants of Hatzeg, indeed, Zalmoxes had to rely on its quick legs and hide in thick bushes, far from the keen eyes of Hatzegopteryx. Zalmoxes were far from the only herbivorous inhabitants of the island. Look closely, and you'll see a dinosaur nibbling on soft vegetation near a duckweed-covered lake. This is Telmatosaurus, one of the earliest known members of the hadrosaur group. But don't let its friendly appearance fool you. This dinosaur was a true survival expert in the harsh environment of Hatzeg. Compared to its mainland relatives, Telmatosaurus was relatively small. It measured about 5 meters in length and stood approximately 1.5 meters tall. A large individual could weigh around 600 kilograms, roughly the size of a modern juvenile hippopotamus. Its long snout ended in a beak perfectly suited for consuming tough vegetation, including leaves, seeds, and young shoots. Telmatosaurus foraged both in dense forests and open spaces, although it avoided venturing into open areas unless absolutely necessary. Of course, Telmatosaurus had its own unique features. This dinosaur could move on both 2 and 4 legs. But why it's simple? Because its task could vary. Muscular hind legs allowed it to move quickly across the terrain, while its relatively small forelimbs likely provided support while feeding. Like Zalmoxes, Telmatosaurus was highly social and formed small herds. Acting in a group increased their chances of detecting swift predators like Balaur, bondoc, and Allodaposuchus. When danger approached, the herd would hide in dense vegetation or freeze motionless, hoping the terrifying Hatzegopteryx soaring above wouldn't notice them. Yet sometimes these herbivores took risks. According to scientists, Telmatosaurus herds would occasionally venture to the shoreline to feast on salty plants rich in minerals. What's that over there? Is that a stout-looking ostrich? Close, but not quite. Meet Gargantuavis pheloinos, the largest known bird of the Mesozoic era. It weighed up to 140 kilograms and was comparable in size to modern ostriches or cassowaries. Alongside Zalmoxes and Telmatosaurus, Gargantuavis played a significant role in the Hatzeg ecosystem. The bird's long, slender neck suggested it had a small and lightweight skull, but its hips were far from slim. In fact, Gargantuavis had disproportionately large hips, setting it apart from most modern ground birds like ostriches, whose narrow hips are adapted for fast running. This unique anatomy made Gargantuavis a highly stable but slow walker. Scientists describe such animals as graviportal, meaning they are adapted for slow and steady movement rather than running. As we already know, speed was a crucial factor for survival on Hatzeg. Yes, this flightless bird was entirely herbivorous. Gargantuavis fed on ferns, seeds, low-growing shrubs, and fruits. Its wide pelvis offered a distinct advantage. It could support a large digestive tract capable of efficiently digesting fibrous vegetation. So, every limitation has its silver lining. Like its fellow herbivores, Gargantuavis spent most of its time hiding in dense thickets, staying out of sight from predators. But even if it dared to flee or raced across open terrain toward the sea and entered the water, it would have faced a terrifying fate. While pterosaurs ruled the skies over Hațeg Island, the underwater world surrounding it was teeming with no less terrifying creatures. Behold this giant marine lizard slicing through the waters of the ancient Tethys Ocean. If Hatzegopteryx was the king of the skies, then Mosasaurus was undoubtedly the ruler of the seas. With a sleek, streamlined body stretching up to 17 meters in length and conical teeth designed for gripping and holding prey, Mosasaurus was a formidable predator. Its menu included fish, turtles, ammonites, and occasionally even marine reptiles. Picture this behemoth stalking its prey, ready to make a sudden lunge at just the right moment, grasping its prey with no chance of escape. Think of it as a modern killer whale, but even more ferocious and faster. It's enough to send chills down your spine, isn't it? In the open waters, Mosasaurus was the apex predator, facing competition only from its larger kin. But even in the ocean, predators were divided into tacticians and strategists. The Hinosaurus was the ultimate strategist. Measuring up to 18 meters in length, it was slightly smaller than Mosasaurus but excelled as a masterful hunter. Its elongated, tightly packed teeth resembled rows of razor-sharp blades that were perfect for catching and holding even the slipperiest and most agile prey, such as large fish and squid. Unlike Mosasaurus, which actively pursued its prey, Hinosaurus' hunting behavior resembled that of a modern crocodile. It would remain motionless, patiently waiting for the perfect moment to strike. One lightning-fast attack, and the prey was trapped in its unyielding jaws, which were almost impossible to escape from. When it came to crushing prey, Hinosaurus had a formidable rival. Prognathodon, a close relative of Mosasaurus, was a true expert at cracking shells and scales. Its thick, robust teeth seemed specifically designed to crush hard exteriors, enabling it to feed on prey that other predators couldn't handle, thereby filling a unique ecological niche. In this sense, the reptilian shell crusher was akin to modern horn sharks. Thanks to their powerful jaws, they too can consume extremely challenging food like sea urchins and shelled mollusks. Prehistoric sharks also prowled the coastal waters around Hatzeg. The largest among them were Carcharhinus, which grew up to 7 meters, and Squalocorax, measuring around 5 meters. They resembled modern mako and sand tiger sharks. Their diets primarily consisted of fish, ammonites, and small marine reptiles. But their feeding specializations differed. Carcharhinus' teeth were optimized for grasping and slicing prey, while the tooth structure of Squalocorax suggests it was adapted to scavenging. Indeed, danger on and around this island would have awaited you at every turn. But where is this ancient land of Hatzeg? Dwarf dinosaurs and giant flying reptiles. Now, around about 66 million years ago, at the end of the Cretaceous period, an asteroid struck the planet, ultimately leading to the dinosaurs' demise. The impact's aftermath caused global climate change. Massive clouds of dust, sulfur, and gas rose into the atmosphere, blocking sunlight for years. So, Hatzeg was doomed to meet its horrific end. Sudden cooling and oxygen starvation led to the mass extinction of animals and plants. The island that had been their home for a long time became a trap. No species managed to escape, and eventually, Hatzeg itself disappeared. The movement of tectonic plates caused the island to slowly but inevitably sink. Millions of years later, it became part of the landmass we now know as Eurasia.